For years, all throughout my lifetime, the FCC has regulated broadcasting because it goes over the air, right? Today we have the internet. Today we have social networks that use the internet. And today, particularly, we have cable television, which may go through a fiber optic under the street. It's not going over the air. What does that do to government control? Do we have enough government control of this? I mean, the FCC is talking about regulating the internet, and there seems to be a lot of resistance to that in Congress.
In 1978, when airline deregulation went into effect, my late wife Betty flew for TWA, I made this observation. Deregulation has taken the last restrictions off greed, is slowly doing away with the middle class, and if it was meant to make a better mousetrap, as far as I'm concerned, it's failed. In 1984, Federal District Court Judge Harold Green allowed the divestiture of AT&T into 7 baby bells. He allowed MCI to enter the marketplace, followed by other companies. 28 years later, some of those baby bells have gobbled up others, and today just a few control the marketplace, Verizon, some of the others. But generally, without those regulations and the ability to charge you pretty much whatever they want. In, and I quote Fulton, the old days, FCC regulation, as we know, was based on scarcity of radio and then TV frequencies, which crossed state lines, and thus were subject to federal government guidelines. By the way, just as airlines flew over many states. Even with those regulations, there was really little abridgment of the First Amendment rights. Cable, satellite, and internet communications go across state lines. In fact, across continental and global lines. Those satellites are 22,300 miles in space. So by rights, I feel that under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution, they should be regulated too. I'm not talking about central control, Moscow directed and all that. But frankly, if you look at the recent Supreme Court rulings, and despite the red line fairness doctrine ruling of many years ago on Turner Cable versus FCC, the must-carry cases, I frankly think there's little hope for such regulation to be imposed, especially since the Supreme Court now defines the internet as, and I'll quote, a broadband electronic network that can deliver content to an individual at his or her choosing. It is different from broadcast TV and cable because the individual has an infinite number of choices, even though constrained by particular internet access providers like Yahoo or AOL. So what does that mean for broadcast radio and TV? In my opinion, for the time being, I think those of us in this room are pretty safe. We'll be able to turn on our radios and TVs and hear and see what we want to see. But the generations coming along after us have never really known the concept of broadcasting. Long ago, under deregulation, the radio spectrum was divided into so many parts that it can be properly called narrowcast. You now have broadcast stations competing for smaller slices of the advertising pie. With companies like Clear Channel, Citadel, Cumulus, and others, the radio stations are viewed as little more than commodities to be bundled together, sort of like mortgages, don't you think? With no real concern for content or quality. In the broadcast industry, in the airlines industry, real estate finance industries, my bottom line is nobody has been minding the store. And as I've commented at more than one all-media roundtable till Erwin shut me up, I think the genie is out of the bottle and we won't be able to get it back in. There's a law student did a treatise on this and it put it into a cautionary paper. What he said was, regulators will not be able to impose content and access restrictions on private media companies without a public dialogue and some form of media regulation. It is likely that the aggregation of internet media companies, and I would add broadcast companies, will continue unabated, thereby threatening important values that our society has long cherished. And the only thing I'll add to that is the question, whatever happened to the public interest, convenience, and necessity? So I am for regulation of the internet and the cable and the other new forms of dissemination of information.